Hello and welcome to Researching with the Library. I'm Brandon and I'm a librarian at the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh in the Information and Research Services Department. We want to take a minute to invite you to turn on captioning by clicking the CC icon in the bottom right of this video. Additional closed captioning settings, including translations, can be found by clicking the gear icon. Alright, let's get started. This program has two main goals. The first is to highlight some of the amazing resources and collections that are available to our patrons. Anyone who has visited the main library in Oakland might know that we house a lot of books in our stacks. However, beyond the 3 floors that are browsable, we have another 8 levels of books. The second goal is to provide some tips and tools for anyone wanting to start a research project at the library. While this mostly focuses on tips for narrowing down your results and saving you time, we also discuss some more general tips for starting and working on a research project. I'll start by outlining the overall journey for learning at the library. Like any good research project, you need to start with a topic or question in mind. Once you have your topic, the first step will be narrowing down your question. Narrowing down what you're looking for will allow you to better navigate databases and your hunt for resources. Additionally, there are also a host of search or finding strategies you can use, such as Boolean operators, using database filters, and more. You will want to apply these techniques to both web searches and to databases you can get access to with your library card. We'll talk about JSTOR and EBSCO Host as two good places to start later in the program. While you can certainly browse through Maine's fantastic nonfiction collection or articles online, it's easy to get lost in the sheer amount of information available. It's for this reason that much of today's program will be about how to narrow down both your topic or field of study and how to narrow down the results when you start your research. So you found a topic. This might be something that sparks your curiosity and you want to know more about, or maybe it's a topic for a larger project. This could be researching historic time periods for a novel you want to work on, analyzing a film or book for a blog or article you'd like to write, or maybe jumping into a new technology. If you're just diving into the topic for the first time, start broad by reading general sources to gain a footing. But then you'll want to narrow your focus to a specific question in order to better find the most helpful resources. For example, if you want to write a book set in the 1940s in Pittsburgh, you have a broad area of research, but it's made up of smaller specific questions. They might be: what business existed in a certain neighborhood in the 40s? What products did people have in their home or find in advertisements? What clothing trends were popular? What social clubs were around that a character might be a part of? And so on. To answer these questions, you'd be looking at different resources such as city directories, clothing catalogs, books about Pittsburgh, and so on. You can see how these smaller, more direct questions will direct you to resources that you can then use to build out your larger project. Once you've found a topic you want to learn more about or conduct research on, and have refined your research questions, the next step is learning how to narrow down your searches so that you get the best results. While I will show you tips for using the library's catalog and academic searches, these same principles can be applied to any search engine, whether that is Google, one of the many databases available for your library card, or wherever else you might be searching. Let's pretend we are working on researching empires throughout history. As you can see here in this picture, just typing in the keyword empire yields us 5,598 results, which is far too much material to reasonably look through and certainly too many titles to attempt to read. Our first step can be to filter those results using preset options on the left side of the catalog. If you'll notice, the first two results for the keyword empire is a music CD and TV show DVD. So it is already clear that our search is pulling for material that isn't relevant to our research interests. Using filters lets you adjust the results to focus on your desired audience, who the intended reader is, format, such as film, book, ebook, graphic novel, magazine, etc., and material you can borrow, just to name a few. By adjusting just 3 of these filters, we've already shortened the results down by about 3,500 titles, leaving us slightly more manageable 2,048 books to look through. This would still be quite a daunting task, and we can certainly do even better. This is where using the advanced search features come into play. On the right, you can see that I've kept some of the same search terms, but also selected specifically nonfiction books and those published within the last 10 years. Depending on the subject and field you are searching in, you might want to look at only material in the last 5 years, or even less. AI, for example, has seen immense changes occur in the last 2 years, and advances have come quite quickly. If you were researching that topic, you might be best narrowing down your search to only 2024 and 2025. With all these parameters set, we now have 884 results, taking out 4,000 books or other types of material, which we know didn't suit our research. But this still leaves us with around 1,000 titles, which means that it's likely our keyword itself, which is too broad and can be refined. The term empire could refer to a wide variety of topics. By researching British or Roman empires, certain time frames within an empire, or perhaps the concept of imperialism itself. The region filter, which highlights locations the books are on and can help us narrow down from those 800 titles to 25 books on empire in Turkey or 75 books on empire in the United Kingdom. Now we are in a range that is feasible to start looking at each item in greater detail to determine if it's worth checking it out and reading more thoroughly. Research can be very time intensive, and so it's important to keep in mind that time is a resource as well. By taking just a couple of moments to narrow down your searches to the items that are going to be the most relevant, you can save yourself a lot of time in the long run and make your research experience far more manageable. These same filtering principles apply to the CLP database search, which can be used to search through most of our databases for academic articles. However, while the tool will likely be your primary source for conducting more in-depth research through the library, CLP doesn't have the same access as a university. Some of the articles you might find either through this database or searching online through something like Google Scholar, the library will not have access to. But this doesn't mean those texts are out of reach. We have a fantastic interlibrary loan service that I will tell you more about in a moment. But through using this database and interlibrary loan together, it really opens up just how much research you can conduct. Similar to the Carnegie Library Catalog, the CLP database search has advanced search or filter options. Many of these will look familiar to what you would see on the catalog filter option, such as preferred language and publication date. Two new options, which are very important, are the academic peer-reviewed journals and the full text online checkboxes. Peer-reviewed means that the article published has been reviewed by at least one, if not more, other experts in the field, and that they have approved its content. This is an important process in academic writing, and it ideally helps limit biases, fallacies, or inadequate research methods. While peer-reviewed is a good indicator of a quality source, it's not foolproof. So for very important sources, checking that the publisher or author is in good standing might be beneficial. The other option, full text online, will limit the search results where the entire document will be able to be read through your library card. This is perfect if you want to make sure that you have full access immediately to what you find. Leaving this box unchecked will give you more results, but might mean waiting for an interlibrary loan to be able to read more than just the paper's abstract. Now that we've covered filtering down your results through tools built into databases and online catalogs, the last search tip I want to highlight is using what's called Boolean operators. Even if you've never heard of one of these before, chances are you've already been using them, even if you didn't know it. When we used advanced search earlier, those different options we were selecting are just applying these Boolean operators automatically kind of behind the scenes for us. This can be very helpful when using a search tool that doesn't have advanced search options, or even just to apply to your own Google searches. While there are quite a few of these, as you can see to the side, the four I want to focus on are and, or, quotations, and not. And while and will search for all keywords. So if you search for generative AI and library science, results will need to contain both of those keywords. Where a search for generative AI or library science will bring you back results for items with keywords for generative AI, both generative AI and library science, and just library science, which would be a lot more results but less specific. So and helps you narrow down or helps you broaden the search. Quotations are used for exact phrases. So if you're looking for information on specifically generative AI and do not want results for other kinds of AI or machine learning, then you would want generative AI in quotations. Lastly, not eliminates information. So as you can see in the example on the side, a researcher might be searching for information on Vikings. but they don't want results that could be talking about the popular TV show that was called Vikings. So you'd have Vikings, not TV show, not movie, something like that. This way you're excluding any search results that include TV show, movie, uh, things that you wouldn't want to come up in your search. While I love my PowerPoint, I want to take a moment to demo kind of walking through our website and using one of the databases, that kind of CLP search database that I had mentioned a couple slides ago. So from starters, we've got carnegielibrary.org, our main page, which will look like this. You'll see these links up here, and you'll want to go to the resources tab. If you're doing any type of research project, wanting to learn more about a new topic, this will be a great place to start. It can help you narrow down whether you're looking for business, resources, genealogy, or different library guides, which can be very useful. I'll show you these. They cover topics such as our archives, art and architecture collection, business resources. A new local history one was just added a couple days ago, I think. That'll talk about newspapers, just in general, uh, resources that the library has for local history topics. So uh, these library guides are great resources to look at further. But what I want to focus on is our databases. And for that, you'll click this Research Resources here. And that'll take you to a page that looks like this. So there's two ways to interact with our databases. One, you can go directly to these different databases. So you can see we've got 19th and 20th century American Railroad journals, 19th century U.S. newspapers, and the list goes on and on and on. As you see, we're on page 1. There are a total of, scrolling a little fast here, but 17 pages of different databases and resources. Kind of like when I was talking about narrowing down results for books, this is similar. It's way too many databases, and a lot like this railroad one are going to be pretty specific. So uh, if you're wanting to work within a database, you want to work with something that's very specific, then you can go to the subjects here, and this might help you narrow down. So if you click literature here, just as an example, find subjects. So you see this first one is now contemporary authors. We have 2 pages down from 17. So, and this will be focused a little bit more on databases that could help with literary topics. But it can sometimes exclude things that might still be useful, especially some of those more broader databases. So for example, after the slide, I'll talk about JSTOR. I love JSTOR. I think it's a great starting point. That would be a useful database to look for academic articles on literature. It didn't appear in this search. So again, the subject one isn't foolproof, but it's a good way to kind of start to narrow it down. However, if you click this Find Resources button up here, once it loads, this will take us to the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh kind of more general database search. This is powered by EBSCO. And so it doesn't include necessarily every single database we have, but it's a lot of them. And if you go to the advanced search tier, which I did talk about how to kind of filter down your results, you can see the collections. So at baseline, here's all the different databases, all the different collections that the search is going to be pulling from. And as you see, this list goes on and on. So you can make it more selective here if you want. But usually I don't mess with the collections as a way to filter down. I use the peer-reviewed, which I talked about, this full text online, maybe the publishing date, but really try to hone my keywords. But I wanted to make sure to show you both what this search looks like, as well as how you can interact with it and give you some tips as well. So My first suggestion is signing in. This is going to be a suggestion for really any of the databases you use. Let's see if it saves my sign in here. Yeah, so if you're signed in, oh no, it did not. Well, no worries. If you are signed in, what this allows you to do is to save the sources you come across. You can have different folders for different projects. And this is really useful for coming back to this. It's that way you're not having to keep all your search results maybe in a folder that you've downloaded. It just makes things easier. And you can make accounts usually with any of these databases. So that's a good practice. If nothing else, it gives you kind of a backup location where when you've come across a good source, maybe you're able to download a PDF, save it in a folder, or save it in a citation manager, but you might also have it, tied to your My EBSCO account here as well. So that'd be my first step is creating an account so you can save your searches. And then for use, I mentioned before that the full text online button will narrow down to only the articles that the library has complete access to, which is still pretty broad. So let's do something like Shakespeare. There's been articles written on Shakespeare for, almost since he was published, so hundreds of years. Huge academic point of study. So you get lots of results. In this case, just by clicking peer-reviewed journals, you get 104,000. If we take peer-reviewed off, you get 1.7 million results, which is an astronomical result. But academic would be a good initial way to peer down to know that you're getting some pretty, thoroughly looked at, hopefully kind of well vetted articles to help out either your argument that you're making or the research that you want to do. Now, the second one, full text online, we'll narrow that down even further. So about half, we still have 55,000. Again, that's because so many things have been published on Shakespeare. And as you can see, the first one is Hitler, Stalin, and Shakespeare, Macbeth. And then the next one is in another language, looks like. And then At the Roots of Business Ethics. So you're getting very different results on a wide range of topics. This is where refining the keyword would help you out a lot. But what I wanted to show you here is that usually this access option, you'll see full text, online full text. So these are ways that you can get directly to the source that you want. So here we'll click full text online and it takes you right to it. A lot of times you'll be able to download a PDF, not always, but you can read the full article, which is fantastic if you want to just dive right in. You don't want to have to go through interlibrary loan. However, some of these, so this one here, digital text analysis in early Shakespeare, has this request through interlibrary loan button. You'll see this sometimes if you have the full text online option clicked, and that's because this is likely an open access that either the way it's been put in or there's some type of conflict, so it doesn't think it's available. However, as long as you have that full text online clicked, you should be able to get access to the full text. So if you receive the request through interlibrary loan, when you think the full text should be available, you want to click on the actual article, which will bring up the page that has more information on it. And then if you scroll down, you will usually come to a location of where it should exist. So we have the DOI number, so we can try putting that in. So we search for the DOI number. Let's see. And now we can read the full text online. So this one required a little bit of extra work to get to. Sometimes there'll just be an extra place here that says access URL that you can click on. But even though this one was suggesting you request through interlibrary loan, it's an open access text, which means it is free and available to the public. And so you just have to kind of maybe hunt it down a little bit. And with this case, since we had the DOI, which is basically like an ISBN for academic articles, I was able to copy that into Google and go right to the article. Let's see if one of these other ones has that access URL option. This is another one that looks like we need to request through interlibrary loan, but if you go down here, you can see access URL. We'll click on this. And luckily it's been translated. You can see the summary here and then the full text as well. So just one of the things to keep in mind when you're using the search, one of the quirks is that sometimes, especially if you, when you have this full text online clicked, from this page, it might look like you'll have to request it through interlibrary loan, but as long as full text online is clicked, it should be available. You might just have to go to the page to look for that access URL or just search the DOI. Hopefully this is helpful, gives you an idea of what searches in this database look like, as well as how to access the material that you find. All right, now we'll head back to the PowerPoint. As we saw in that video, the library has access to dozens of different databases, all with different focuses. There are newspaper archives, 19th and 20th century railroad journals, emergent intellect for business and industry data, Access Music Library where you can listen to classical music, and so many, many more. Since many of these databases are quite specific, which ones you need will really depend on the research you're working on. With this in mind, we're going to focus on two more general databases to get you started. I mentioned during that video about JSTOR. As I already said, I'm a big fan. This is one of the databases that's a pretty good catch-all for scholarly journals. So if you're looking for newspapers, for more historical data, like you wanted to see advertisements from the 40s or 50s, JSTOR might not be the best bet, but academic articles on subject areas such as art, business, history, humanities, law, medicine, science, social sciences, and so on, this is going to be a great first stop. Some of the nice elements about JSTOR: the articles that are in the database are peer-reviewed and open access, which means usually if you are finding it on JSTOR, you're going to have access immediately to that article, which, as I showed you, might not necessarily be the case with the EBSCO, kind of more general search that we have, or in potentially some of the other databases where maybe the library pays for certain collections within the database, but not access to everything that's available. So sometimes the search result might give you articles back that the library or with your library card you don't have access to. You can always request those through interlibrary loan. And like I said, a lot of times we can get access to that material through that interlibrary loan process, but it does take time. It won't happen kind of immediately. Whereas with JSTOR, if a result comes back, you should have access to it right then and there. So this is kind of whether it's for kind of history, science, literature, really great just first stop, first database to go to where you're going to get likely some results for whatever you're working on. And then from there, maybe you can look at the works cited page, who the source you find in JSTOR, who are they citing, and then start to maybe track down those articles, or go to a even more specific database depending on kind of your need or the project you're working on. The next database I want to highlight is our just general one. I already showed you how you can find kind of the full text for some of those that might not initially look like it or state that you have to request from interlibrary loan in that video demo. But just want to highlight again, this is another great, a more general database like JSTOR. In fact, I think this EBSCO one will search either parts of, if not the entirety of JSTOR. It's probably using different search engine, maybe pulling different metadata. So sometimes it's definitely worth going to both of these and typing in your search to see what results you'll get. The benefit to EBSCO, though, is that you'll cast an even wider net. You won't just be looking at whatever JSTOR has access to, but that huge list of collections that I showed you. So it's going to draw from a lot of the different databases the library has access to. The downside with that, as you saw when I searched for Shakespeare and got and took off the kind of peer-reviewed academic search, and it returned with 1.7 million results. So casting a wider net can be or can have disadvantages as well. So it really depends on kind of what part of the research you're in. Are you really kind of narrowing down? Or are you still starting kind of broader, just seeing what resources, what articles are out there for which one might be best? Other conveniences with the EBSCO database, you can set search alerts. So it'll kind of let you know if a new article gets published or has those tags tied to it. And if you're logged in, you can save searches. So maybe you put together a really great Boolean search, or you found a really good pairing of kind of key terms that had really great results. You can save that specific search. So you can go back to it. Maybe you only got to the first couple of pages and there's 5 or 10 more pages of results left you want to look through. So that's a nice feature, as well as able to curate project collections. So you could have different projects you're working on. You can put the sources you find into maybe one folder for research on Shakespeare and another folder for local history or Pittsburgh related research you're doing. Like JSTOR, lots of different subject areas, just some examples. And these subject areas denote kind of different publications it's pulling from. So, for dance, there's 16 different publications. For ecology, there's 92 publications. Labor and employment, 57. Even if you don't want to narrow down the search through these specific subject areas, just by looking and seeing how many publications are tied to these can be helpful to know kind of how strong or how much or how wide of a search is this EBSCO going to be able to do for something. As you can see with dance, 16 publications versus the 92 for ecology means you're maybe going to get a better search from ecology related searches within the EBSCO, and dance maybe you need to look elsewhere because maybe what the EBSCO database is pulling from just doesn't have access to as much material. But this can also be a more specific topic. There might just be a lot more work done or journals publishing on ecology than dance, which is likely the case. But it gives you more information, which is always helpful for figuring out, with the limited time you have to do research, am I using the best database to get me the results that I can then start working on that novel I'm researching for, or start putting together my argument for this article or blog post, or whatever you might be working on. I've spent a lot of time throughout this program talking about how to access our online databases, whether it be academic, newspaper archives, or so on. And while those are extremely important to any research you might be performing at the library, and it's important to highlight just how much material you get with your library card, I'd be remiss if I didn't also talk about the Carnegie Library's fantastic physical collection as well. If you've been to our main library, especially if you've looked for any nonfiction books, you've probably ventured to either the mezzanine or the second floor. In our beautiful reading room, the reference room, that's where our reference material will be. These are largely encyclopedias on a wide variety of topics, world books. These materials aren't able to be checked out, but can, like those broad databases, be a really good starting point for the research you're conducting. Here you might find a basically horror encyclopedia that's been put together by academics that talk about the main authors of Gothic literature or horror literature, the main themes. And we'll have really nice works cited pages that, as a researcher, you can then key into, here's the kind of canonical authors I should be looking at, or here is the section on vampires, and here's the canonical vampire, both kind of text you should read, like Dracula or something, but also the academic writers who are writing on this topic as well. And they're not just literary. The reference books cover the entirety of the Library of Congress, so you'll find technical books there, science books, literature books, like I mentioned with horror, but really any subject as well. So these are where you're going to find those broader books, those encyclopedias that can be a really good starting point for any type of project. Then we have our circulating nonfiction collection, that collection that you can check out, which is on the mezzanine in the second floor. Covers every letter, Library of Congress, wide variety of subjects and themes. But then we also have a non-circulating collection. As I mentioned, while there's 3 browsable stacks, we have 11 floors of stacks in total. So this includes our periodicals, some of which date back quite far. We have Harper's Bazaar that goes back to 1868, and of course, continues from there. But this could be great if you're studying fashion and you want to look at fashion through the ages. We have Life magazines that go back, 100 years. You're looking at the 40s, the 60s, a certain time period. It's a good place to draw out advertisements, world events that were happening during this time. So just a really great wealth of information. Similarly, we have almanacs that go back 100 years. So there's a lot more material than what's just browsable. All of this can be found on our catalog. And Library Stack could always kind of show you how to narrow down in the catalog if you want to look for just these kind of closed stack or non-circulating books as well. The one thing to note, any of those books, if you see them on the catalog, it'll say ask a library staff member for help, something along that line. These will have to look at in the library. You won't be able to take them home with you, but you're welcome to study for as long as you like during library hours, and then we can hold them at a desk for you if you want to come back the next day or sometime later that week as well. It's also important to note that the 3rd floor of the main branch has our local history and genealogy collection, as well as CLP's newspaper collection, largely on microfilm, but it's really fantastic microfilm collection, especially for local newspapers. And then the local history and genealogy collection does have some books that can be checked out, but also a lot of reference books as well. So if you were looking at a specific neighborhood or wanted to look at different counties in Western PA, study kind of their history, this would be the location you'd want to start at. Lastly, we also have a Reader Books and Special Collections department here at Maine with some really cool and interesting pieces there. You can find more information on our website and our LibGuide, but to look at any of that material, you have to make an appointment. That way the staff can have that material and walk you through it and be there with you as you look through it. But if you want to do a project on a book we had in that Reader Books or Special Collections, you can look at those materials as well. Now that we've covered some tips and tools to find those amazing and perfect resources for that project you're working on, I wanted to spend a moment to talk about citation management systems. I know, super exciting. But if you haven't heard of these systems before, this might be really helpful for you, particularly in organizing all of this fantastic stuff you're finding. So I'm highlighted one specifically here, Zotero. There's a couple out there. I would definitely do some research if you search, best citation management systems. You'll probably get blog posts or lists of these, or maybe even university library guides on them. So Zotero isn't the only one out there, and it might not even be the best one for you, but it's the one I have the most experience with, and I think it works perfectly fine. Zotero, along for most of the kind of major ones that you'll find if you look into this more, do have either browser add-ons, but are basically easy to use with any type of a catalog system and a lot of databases. If you go to pull the citation information from JSTOR or from, say, Pitt's library, um, they'll have an option for, like the file that Zotero uses. But basically, what these systems do is give you a way to help you organize all of the references you're coming across. So say you're downloading PDFs left and right. If you're only working with maybe 10 to 20 sources, this would probably be more involved than what you really need and might not actually save you time. For the 10 to 20 resources, you can have a folder on your desktop that you place them into, maybe have a Word document connected with the PDF that has notes on that article, something along those lines. You could probably kind of self-manage those citations. But if you're working on a much larger project, multiple projects, where the amount of PDFs or resources that you're dealing with are pushing 30, 50, 100, that folder on your desktop is probably going to get a lot more confusing and might not be the best. You might spend more time, searching for this newspaper article you found 3 months ago that had this great quote that you want to find now, but you can't remember exactly which one it is. So you're retreading a lot of kind of ground that you had already done. That's when you're working with these larger scale projects. Having a citation management system can make finding those previous resources a lot easier. So it's something I highly recommend looking into. Can definitely be a time saver. But as I mentioned, for smaller projects, probably not necessarily, because there will be a little bit of learning curve. But basically, this is a way that you can put in both that citation information, so the author, the publisher, where you found it, most of which can be pulled directly from the database, as well as that PDF, and then make notes and just have a much more organized way to interact with all of these sources you're coming across. So definitely something to look into on a much sort of larger project, especially if you're finding difficulty with keeping everything organized just with files and folders on your desktop. I've mentioned interlibrary loan a couple times throughout this presentation, and I want to take a moment here to go into more detail, both on what interlibrary loan is and how you can get access to it. For starters, interlibrary loan is a service that supplements art collections and allows patrons to borrow material from libraries outside of Allegheny County. So while Carnegie Library and Allegheny County, for that matter, has an amazing catalog and a great selection of books, it's impossible for us to have everything. And specifically, for more niche topics or expensive academic books, the chances that our public library will have them is much slimmer than, say, a university, especially when a university focuses on a certain topic, maybe, such as tech books at Carnegie Mellon. What interlibrary loan then allows us to do is for patrons to request books that we might not have in our collection, um, and to ask that maybe a local university or another public library, whether it's in our state, outside our state, or sometimes even internationally, that does have a copy of that, if they kind of loan it to us, and then we can loan it to you as a patron. So it really expands for research and really for anything, just how much material you have access to. The downside that not everything that requested is get approval, especially if it's something that's very rare, extremely expensive, and sometimes reference books in general might have a harder time. So kind of that rare material, something where you might have to go to a location, or research would have to go to a location because it's archived, it's special. You can't get a Gutenberg Bible through Interlibrary Web. But you can get journal articles, DVDs, and it's a great way to get academic books that might be $100, $200, $300 that a public library might not buy that many of, but our neighbors, the universities around, might have plenty of copies of. So great resource. As far as how to access it, you'll need to go to Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh Interlibrary Loan. You search that into Google, it should be the first link. And then you'll make an account there, as well as have other FAQs if you have more questions. But once you've made an account, you can request material that you're interested in. I will say, the more information when you request material, the easier it'll be on our team to make sure they find the right source. So if it's a book, the publisher, the publication date, author, ISBN numbers, that can be really helpful for journal articles, especially having the journal, the number, the issue, and if there's a DOI number, anything that can link to make sure that this is the exact source that you want. And of course, if you request material and there's some type of confusion, our team will reach out to make sure that they're looking for the right book or the right article for you. But a great resource, especially for researchers, something I highly recommend looking into if you haven't done so already. For further reading and for a deeper dive into research methods and tips, check out these sources available at the main library. For live events, check our seasonal program guides or online at carnegielibrary.org/events. The Information and Research Services Department hosts hybrid, in-person, and virtual programs on research techniques and AI each month. You can always reach us through email at info@carnegielibrary.org or give us a call at 412-622-3114. If you have account questions, need help looking for a source, or general reference questions. Additionally, we offer one-on-one research appointments if you would like more in-depth database walkthroughs or would like assistance with a research project. Thank you for watching Researching with the Library. If you enjoyed this program and are interested in more research or AI topics, check out the Information and Research playlist.